Hey, what's up YouTube? Jeremiah Hersey here. Welcome back to the next PL300 test prep question. Today we're going to be looking at a question related to views and determining if they are a fact table or a dimension table. Now, we've talked about fact tables and dimension tables a lot in other videos. Remember that your fact table is going to contain a lot of the same data. It's going to be whatever you're measuring essentially. The dimension is going to be how you're going to break down the fact table. Remember, dimension tables are designed to filter your fact table down so that you can have an understanding of the metrics that you're trying to incorporate. So let's go ahead and take a look at this test prep question. The question says you plan to create a Power BI data set to analyze attendance at a school. Data will come from two separate views named View 1 and View 2 in an Azure SQL database. View 1 contains columns shown in the following table. And so we can see that here. This is going to be our first table. We have attendance date, a student ID, a period number, and a class ID. And then we also have the associated data types here as well. View 2 contains columns shown in the following table. We have class ID. Right off the bat, we see that these two are going to be related through that same column, class ID. Class name, class subject, teacher, first name, last name, period number, school year, and a period start time and end time. And so it says the views can be related based on the class ID column, which we already identified. So that's our key column or our relationship column here. So that's our relationship key that we're going to relate the two tables together. Class ID is the unique identifier for specified class, period, teacher, and school year. For example, the same class can be taught by the same teacher during two different periods, but the class ID will have a different class ID. You need to design a star schema data model by using data in both views. The solution must facilitate the following analysis. And so this is what we're trying to accomplish here, is that we want to be able to count the classes that occur by period, the count of students in attendance by period, by day, and the average number of students attending a class each month. Which table should you include the teacher first name and the period number fields? So as we think about understanding how we're going to determine which of these tables is going to be the fact table and which one's going to be a dimension table, we have to have an understanding of where these calculations are going to come from. So if we're going to count the classes that occur by period, we have to think, okay, we're going to do a count of the class ID. That's how we would then break it apart by the period number. We could do a count that way. The count of a student's in attendance, well, the attendance is up here in view number 1. So we have the attendance date that's going to be able to relate to us the attendance for that specific class. We could do a count of the student ID that is going to be in that specific class and that specific period. The average number of students attending a class each month. Once again, we can look at the attendance date range for a month and determine how many students were in it. And as we think about the difference between a dimension and a fact table, a dimension table is going to be describing about our data, and so it's more descriptive in nature. So because of that, it's going to tell us, okay, for that specific class, who is the teacher, right? So we have our teacher first name and last name here, and it also has our class as well. Now, if I was designing this in a star schema, I would potentially have this broken down to look something like this. So we would have our teacher dimension table, and and we would have our attendance fact table. Now, the reason that I would break this down this particular way is because when we're dealing with designing a star schema, we want to make sure that we're understanding how we're going to be looking at attendance. So we would be looking at attendance broken down by teacher. And then the teacher dimension would contain things like the teacher first name. So it asks us here, as part of the question, which table should you include teacher first name and period number? So the teacher first name would come from this dimension table, the teacher dimension. And the reason I say it's teacher dimension is because that is the table that has the teacher first name. It relates to the other table. Now remember, when we're designing a star schema, we have to have a dimension table and a fact table. We're not going to have only dimension tables. That wouldn't make sense. Star schema is a dimension table and fact table related together through the relationship key, which we were told was class ID. So I would say that I would call this the attendance fact table and the teacher dimension. And so for this first answer here, the teacher first name, I would say that would be a part of the teacher dimension because it determines the teacher's first name, the last name. It's got a teacher ID and a specific class ID associated to a different period, because it told us that the class ID is a unique identifier, and this is where it tells us it's a specified class, period, teacher, and school year. So it's not going to be duplicated, and so that's going to be the relationship that we use. But as we think about the period number, which table should we include the period number fields? So notice that we have two different options here. So I'm going to highlight them in green. So we have period number that's in our teacher dimension. And we also have period number, which is in our attendance fact table. Now, as we determine which period number that we're going to use, remember that we have to take into account the analysis that's going to occur. So it told us here that we want to get a count of classes that occur by period and a count of students in attendance by period by day. Because we're going to be doing a count based on the period itself, we want to use our fact table, not our dimension table, which is why I would choose the period number to be the attendance fact table because of the analysis that is going to be completed based on the period. I would choose the attendance fact table. So the teacher first name would come from the teacher dimension and the period number would come from the attendance fact table. I want to thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content. I'll see you in the next one.